Okay, our beloveds, our another is going through another huge transitory process, which is acknowledging grief, what it really, truly looks and feels like. So many of you have bypassed this process by shutting down those emotions within you rather than appreciating what they have to teach you. And therein lies our another's great lesson that she is experiencing and sharing with many of you who happen to listen. Grief is a process much like the spiral of life. You have moments where it gets easier, and then you have moments where it gets more difficult and challenging. And many of you just try to gloss over the challenging pieces by denying our existence, the vibrational existence of grief, because you just don't want to feel it. It's painful, and yes, it is painful, but within the pain is also a beautiful lesson, and that is that you are a vulnerable being who can be broken, who can be hurt, who can be shaken beyond what is comfortable. And where this grief resides is where your heart lies, where your shame exposes itself, where your tendencies for self-discovery are muffled because it's just not worth it. You'd rather have an easy life where you skate through living rather than digging deeply. You live shallow and simplistic lives because you don't want to dig into the depths of who you are as human beings. You see grief as a negative thing. You see pain as a negative thing. And instead, we ask you just to acknowledge that these are aspects of lives and to sit with it, to honor it, to share it with others where you feel safe to be heard and held, and most importantly, to live it. You're coming into a new age where expression of emotions is acceptable, where you will no longer be shamed for being weak or silly or overly emotional or are you on your period? These were the energies of the past, right? We could come up with other things. We're sharing one with our another now, which we shall not say out loud because it is unkind. But the point is that you have shamed one another when you express emotions that are touchy, meaning when you share a sticky emotion and another person is unable to meet you there, rather than just holding you and saying, I will hold the space for you because you're struggling right now, and I will be here for you to let you know that all will be well at some point. But until then, let yourself feel this grief. It is okay. Instead, they say, oh my God, aren't you past this emotion already? Are we going there again? Seriously, you need to toughen up. This is not the world that you can live in. You need to be tough in order to survive. Blah-de, blah-de, blah. Well, that was the energy of the Piscean age. And you are now in the Aquarian age, fully. And we are moving you further away from the point of resistance where pain and emotion were negative. We encourage you to explore grief now, loss, pain, rejection, desperation, loving yourself not enough because you were told you were not worthy. Others have abandoned you through death or through just a different transitory process, and you are left holding the bag. Why do you have to get over it is our question. Why can this not become a part of your beautiful tapestry that you are weaving? Why does the tapestry have to be built out of highlights and high moments? Why can it not also be bridged with grief? It is the grief that gives you some of the most amazingly explosive emotions. You feel the color contrast so much more, as if you were to drop a bucket of paint from a 3-story building and it just splattered on the ground. And the more violent the grief, the more colorful the pattern expression. Why must you all talk about depression as being a bad thing rather than a place and a phase where you get to know yourself, the real you, more deeply, where you grow roots, where you recognize what feels good and what doesn't, and your inability just to simply bounce back, but instead you are forced to live within this dark cavern? Why is that bad, is our question. Now we know it feels not good, and the desire is to get out of there. But why do we shame people who feel depression? Do we shame people for feeling joy? Do we shame people for laughter? No. And the point is to recognize that you are a full expression. The coin that used to exist of duality, which was the good, the bad, the light, the dark, right? The holy and the evil, it is no more. You are now on a globe with lots of varying emotions, with different coordinates that express it. It is a 3-dimensional coordinate now instead of a 2-dimensional coordinate. And so we just ask you to embrace your dark emotions. Our another came as a wounded healer. And she keeps asking us to lift this burden from her. And we say no. While we know it doesn't feel good, it helps her to share with you from a vulnerable place where she is at, when she is struggling, so that you all can see what grief looks like and why it is okay. She is working on no longer shaming herself for her sadder moments, because her greatest gift before, we must tell you, was, as she said yesterday, to find a silver shining on any shit sandwich. And she could convince herself of this, as this was her coping mechanism. But now we are asking her to feel and to see as it is, to no longer gaslight herself, to no longer spiritually bypass herself. The Stockholm Syndrome is real. It simply is. And different people experience it differently. And healing from such a journey is not easy. And you find loss and regret and sadness within your experiences, even when you know what it really was that you lived through. And that is okay. So others can attempt to shame her, and she will have to find the resiliency to bounce back. But most importantly, she is feeling these feelings, these deep, gutturally painful emotions that she is being asked to go through, to help her to put her past into perspective from a place of love, meaning she knows what she has gone through, but she is doing her best right now to experience it through a realistic, loving perspective, meaning to damaged people came together and created an experience that is what it was, or was what it is. And therein she will find her healing. It is not easy, and she is sharing this with you all to help you all to really understand what this looks like. Life is complex. Life has multiple layers. And when you expect others to live simply or linearly, you will be disappointed. And you too hold yourself to that same standard, which is also equally as unhealthy. So just recognize where you are scared, where you are sad, where you are dissatisfied, and sit with the grief. Let it envelop you for once and feel what it feels like within your physical body. Does it create a painful experience in your left toe, in your lower back, in your left shoulder, in your right kneecap, in your left hip, in your breastplate, in the space on the neck below your right ear? Is there a tightness there? Do you have tingling in your sinus cavities? Do you have a tickling at the back of your throat? Just sit with it. Sit with what grief feels like, not the words in your head. That is oftentimes your manager trying to manage your process, to explain to you why it's not so sad, not so bad, why you just need to get over it and move on. Hear those words, but don't attach to them. Let them float by and continue to come into your body. Let this grief of loss, of pain, of suffering, of transition be present. Feel it, see it, taste it, hear it, but not in words, but in vibration. Feel the sensations on your skin, the breath as it goes in and out of your nose, the diaphragm expanding and collapsing, your heart beating, your kidneys functioning, your liver functioning, your pancreas, your lymphatic system moving throughout your body. This is where the pain resides, within the cells, within the walls, within the essence of your physical body. And when you finally feel it, it feels seen and heard, and it can begin to move. But not until then. You must let it express itself in the physical, and not in tears, in the physical representation of what this grief feels like in your body. And maybe in a month or a year or 10 years, it will come back to remind you that that particular point within the tapestry is beautiful, and for you to reflect back on it, to see what you have survived, what you have managed to experience without it destroying your soul, and by becoming more resilient, not because you overcame it, but because you are it. You are beginning to see what divine creatures you really are, and how this looks in a new age, and how it feels. You are being reborn. And when you are born, the new sensations of life are a little overwhelming at times. But just sit with them, cry, feel them, find the patterns, and figure out what works in this new world that didn't work while you were in the womb. It is your new journey to figure out the new vibration of this new life's experience within the Aquarian age. It is nothing else other than that. It is the butterfly that is coming out of its cocoon and having to learn how to flap its wings and fly when it has never done this before. You were a caterpillar before, and then a mushy goo. And you are now being transformed and trans-illuminated into your new blessed being. Trust that all is well, all is well, all is well. And so it is. Namaste.